Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, or maybe even good morning from wherever you are. Welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. If you've never been here before, my name is Jakub Boris, and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, here in the south of England. And let me quickly double check that everything is going right, just to make sure. Everything is good here. And I think we maybe have a little bit of difficulty with the view on Facebook. So let me just make sure that everything goes well. Okay. Cool. I think we are live on YouTube anyway. And at the background of this, we are trying to do our best to make sure that we are also broadcasting on Facebook. If we are not, then we will upload the video later on YouTube as well. Looking at the comments, I can see Zdeněk is here. Means that he must be watching from somewhere. Zdeněk, can you just quickly shoot me a message on where you're watching from, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. That would be great. And in the meantime, we're going to continue. Well, anyway, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jakub Bors. One more time, I am a photographer here in West Sussex in the south of England, and I'm also founder of Clever Photographer. Now, this photography review show is something that we do every week, or usually at 6 p.m. UK time. We do it live. And basically, the whole idea is that we receive images from you and then we review them, give you some tips and tricks on what you could do differently next time. And hopefully, this way, all together, we keep moving forward on our photography journey. Now, looking at the things, it looks like really it's just YouTube, which is live right now. So I'm really sorry for that, but don't worry. Once again, as I say, we will upload the video on Facebook later on today. So we're going to continue quickly before we move on to the reviews. Just how does it work? When we review the images, we look at three parts of the photo. We look at the technical part. That's where we look at the camera details. We look at the exposure, sharpness, noise, and all the technical parts of the image. After that, we look at the artistic part of the image. This is where we look at things like composition, main subject, storytelling, framing, and things like that. Just anything that basically represent a visual part of the photo. And finally, at the end, if we have a time, and if I think that there is a benefit of me giving you some tips on what you could do, I will give you some tips on photo editing for your photo. So this is what we do. Now, if you want to join us and if you want to send your photos over, it's super easy. All you need to do is to join our Clever Photographer Plus membership. Really, for a little fee, you can get access to this photography review show. You can send your images. You get access to our Clever Photographer Academy. And most importantly, every month, you will get hundreds of digital tools, always themed in a certain style. So, for example, the one which is coming out tomorrow is summer travel photography. Last month we had a summer portrait photography, and it's a lots of fun. It always includes things like Lightroom and Luminar Neo presets. It includes overlays, textures, custom skies, custom brushes, and lots of fun. So that is all out of the way now. Looking at Zdeněk, so he's looking and watching on YouTube. So YouTube should be running. So it's all good. So since that's the case, let's jump into the photos and start right away. So starting from the top, we have lots of photographers with kind of mixed of photographic styles. So we will be reviewing that. We also have some product pictures from Zdeněk, and we also have some wildlife images from Donna, John, and Ken. So welcome, come to that. We'll start from the top with Deepak. Okay, so we have three images. I usually review two, so let's pick two. I think we can definitely have a look at this one, and we can also look at this one. This one is also very interesting. It's a lovely texture, but I think maybe those two will be interesting too. So let me zoom in. So you can see, now you should see everything right, so we can start. So starting with this image right here. This was captured with Panasonic Lumix. Now I'm assuming that's a camera, I hope. Anyway, looking at the camera details, it was captured with ISO 200, 55 millimeters, f7.1, and 1600 of a second. So from the camera details, everything should be fine. ISO is nice and low. F7.1 is usually a good number to start, and 1600 of a second is also good. Looking at the image, the exposure is good. Now, already just looking from far, the sharpness is quite decent too, that including the people. It has a nice colors. It carries a little bit of noise, but nothing overly crazy. So in overall, technically, actually, it's quite nicely done. Nothing really wrong with that. Maybe just a little bit of extra noise, but that most likely is caused by the camera it was captured with. So that's definitely something to have a look at. Now, looking at the composition, looking at the storytelling part of the image. Now, I really like the contrast between the kind of overcast, unsaturated day. So basically, you have the sky, which doesn't really have many colors, and then you have the sun and everything, which is really kind of on a blend side, more like a pastel colors. And then in the middle of it, you have this really nicely saturated people as well as the umbrellas. I think that works quite nicely. Now, on the top of it, you get this kind of really nice leading line here, which I think works nicely too. And in overall, as a contrast, I think it works quite well. Now, there is a lot of people there, so that works in that way too. Obviously, it's more like a scene from a seaside resort. And in overall, I don't think there is really anything wrong with the image. I think it's nicely done. Technically, it's nicely done. Composition wise, it has an idea behind with the mixture and contrast of the colors. So all in all, Deepak, well done there. Well done on that one. Now, moving on the next picture. So this is this kind of colorful capture, almost looking like from South America, with obviously different colors of the houses. Now there is a sky on the top, which I'm not 100% sure if it was there like this or if it's a sky replacement. In fact, looking at this top part of the building, if I would have to guess, I would think it's a sky replacement. And the main thing which I think is giving it out is this really unsaturated light, which is very flat and diffused, which is quite cool. And then you have this quite strong sunset above. If there would be such a strong sky, I would assume that the light, the saturation, and everything would be much more powerful, also much more saturated. So that would be my guess there. But anyway, still looking at the camera, so we are looking still at the same Panasonic device. This time, still the camera settings is on ISO 200, f7.1, and 1/400 of a second. So on the camera settings, the ISO is good. F7.1, again, very good. 1/400 of a second, again, very good there. When you look at the image, you can see definitely that the sharpness is there. The image is nicely saturated. It's quite crisp. There is lots of noise again on this part, especially in the darker areas. You can see it a lot. This time it's not just the grain noise, but it's also the color noise, and it's a little bit visible. I think probably what kind of strikes me first the most is the sky. It's just because it doesn't really fit the situation. Uh, when it comes to composition, another artistic part of the image, the leading lines are quite nice. The colors are quite nice. The shapes are nice. And I would personally probably prefer just to have a sky which wouldn't actually have maybe texture, maybe just bright sky or something, which wouldn't really distract the rest of the image. And in fact, I would probably even crop it a little bit tighter if it would be me. Still, again, lovely idea. I think the things to look out for is the noise. And if you're gonna do sky replacement, just to follow the basic rules. And if I have an overcast day and I have an overcast picture and I want to replace the sky, I will replace it with overcast sky. Maybe the sky, which I will replace it with, will have a more texture in it, but it will still be gray sky with the darker and brighter areas. and I will apply it on that. I very, very rarely would take a sky which would be such an extreme as a like a bright daylight sky and try to create it as a sunset scene. It's just very. It's not necessarily that you can't do it. It's just it's really difficult to make it look like it belongs there. So that's about it. Deepak, that's it for your pictures. Thank you very much for sending them over. I like both of them. There's some great stuff on it as well. So well done, and I hope I can see more of your images soon. Which brings us to Greg's images. So Greg, he sent us a train, and then this train hiding in a fog with the flag, and then this balloon right here. So image wise, definitely let's talk about this one to start with. This is captured with Nikon D7500. The lens is 80 to 400 millimeters. And from the camera settings, ISO 200, 80 millimeters, f8, 1/250th of a second. So ISO nice and low, f8 again giving us nice sharpness, pretty much all the way through, as you can see, and 1/250th of a second. For that fast, we getting this really nicely frozen steam, which I think works really, really well, steam and smoke. And so I understand for the idea behind. So it's a lovely, lovely picture. Let's zoom in again. The details are nice. The sharpness works really well. Again, I really like the fact that the smoke and the steam is captured like this. So all in all, it's quite nice. Now, when it comes to composition, the storytelling, I think it works quite nicely. If I would wish there would be a little bit more space in front, but actually it's not really bad. I think it's nicely framed. It's very cinematic with the kind of really wide cropping. I think it works really well. And I think in overall it just works very nicely. I think it's a lovely, lovely picture. Now the mixture of the colors, I think there's like a green, and then there is a brown, white, black, and green again. I would maybe bring down the saturation of the green down a little bit just to remove the distraction. And the reason why the eyes get so much attracted here to this area is because the rest of the image is very mute, it uses very kind of pastel earthy colors. So you have this kind of brown, black, gold, white. So in the middle of it, the contrast is the green, and I think the attention really should be more on the train. So what you could do, you could just jump into any tool you're using, but you're basically looking for HSL panel. And then in saturation, I would bring the green down even more. So somewhere around here, really to take away the attention there. And as usual, I would probably help myself with the vignette, just adding more attention to the train itself and guiding the viewer's eyes towards that. So maybe not that much, maybe just a little bit somewhere around here. After that, of course, you could do some dodge and burn, but in overall like this, I think it's really cool. What I think would work nicely on this image would be, for example, something like a little bit of fade to make it a little bit more cinematic, and then maybe add more contrast to the train. Also, the dramatic slider here in Luminar Neo works really nicely on pictures like this, just to make them stand out a little bit further. And on, I would play more and more with it. So lovely picture, Greg. Thank you very much for sending it over. And let's quickly jump and look at the other two. This one is lovely. I mean, the balloon is very, very nice. The sunset looks great as well. But really, there is just lots of other distractions. I wish the balloon would have been higher, and it would be more just about the balloon and the sky. Maybe if it would go just a little bit more up, it would have been nicer. Just once again, I think there is lots happening on the image. And on this one, the train is coming from behind, which is quite nice. But looking at it, you always have to kind of take a moment and then look at the image. And the main focus immediately goes on the flag. Again, following the same idea as with the first picture. It's the question of the contrast. And as everything is very kind of earthy, unsaturated, with the kind of, let's say, unsaturated colors, then this really stand out a lot. and that's immediately the first thing you look at. So it's actually quite nicely done. It's a lovely story. You have the flag, and then you have a train coming behind it. Just it's just something different. I would probably crop it a little bit tighter, and again go for the 16:09. If we looking really at the flag, then I would go for something like this and create almost like a cinematic movie scene. So this is what I would do with it. I think it works quite nicely. Both of the images are great. This one, maybe just different framing for it, but still great attempt. The hot air balloons are great subject. So thank you very much for sending all three images. It's my pleasure to review them for you. And I hope to see more images from you soon. Looking into chat, Tony is saying that he couldn't watch on Facebook. Yes, Tony, we had a little issue on the beginning of the broadcast. So we had to actually skip the Facebook for some reason. There is something on a Facebook side of the stream, and it doesn't broadcast either on our Facebook page or Facebook group. So because the time was going on, we are broadcasting, as you can see, live on YouTube. And we will then upload the video when we finish the stream. We will upload the video to Facebook. But if you found us here, that's great. We haven't looked at your images yet, so make sure you stay with us. Moving on, we go to Stefan. Stefan, we have lots of images from you, so we will have to look at what we gonna review. Now, this is very lovely, lovely contrast, lovely colors, actually really nice sharpness as well, nicely handled dark background, very well. This, I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking at. It's an egg, and then it's sitting on something, and then it has these edges. It's very creative, but yeah, not 100% sure. There is more of flowers. This is really nice, but it's a little bit soft. I think maybe some sharpening was applied to it, and it's a little bit visible. When you push the sharpening a lot, it creates this kind of this like a noisy effect around the edges, and you can see it on it a little bit. So that's that. This is very lovely. We already look at the glass ball with this effect. I think that always looks great. I already commented last time on the fact that it would be great if you could get like a mirror without these scratches. I think that would really help to the overall effect. I mean, if you really spend the time and creating something like this, I think it would be great if you could get the mirror without the scratches on it. This is quite nice too, nicely done. It's a lovely contrast. The dark color works really nicely with the purple. I think I maybe seen a similar image from you before. I would probably crop it a little bit tighter on this side just to create more of a composition balance. So maybe something like this. Maybe this is a little bit too tight, but it will give you an idea on what I mean. Maybe I would crop it even further from the top just to, again, create balance there. Or we could leave a little bit more space around and then create something like this. But that way we create balance on the scene, and I think it's a little bit more powerful than the original image. This, again, is really, really cool. Shame for the little edge here, but it's very interesting. It creates really nice effect. And, you know, these kind of pictures are definitely something you could print and have it on your wall, because people would really stop and look at it. I think it would be really interesting. Then, following the other examples, we have two self-portraits, I would say. This one is quite cool, actually, around the hair. I think that creates really nice shape. It almost looks like you have extra hair or something like that. It's quite creative. This is also cool, very creative way, how the pattern repeats itself all the way in the middle. That's also cool. Well done, Stepan. And this one as well. Now, on the last two, I'm almost starting to get dizzy, and I'm not 100% sure what we are looking at. But definitely keep playing with these things. It's great to see that you're trying to be creative, and it's always great to see the results. Again, I think the flower is great. The sharpness is very, very good. Looking at it, the light is quite decent as well. And again, I think the dark background with the purple works well. I think the camera setting is all good there, and it's nicely handled. Similarly, this one on the dark background, I think works nicely too. This one, just keep an eye on the sharpening. Tony, you right on time. It's time to look at your pictures. So, no, not Zdeněk yet. Tony, let's have a look at what we have from you this week. So, there we go. One on a flower right here. And then we have, is it a fly? No, it's a bee. Mushroom. It's a little bit early for mushrooms. And then there is another, um, I don't know name of these animals, but I would say insect and maybe a little capture from your garden. So what we're going to look at this week? Let's start with this image here. Funny enough, now when I look at it, my first reaction is to tilt my head around. And I don't know why, but it's just the way it captured. It almost feels like it should be this way. And maybe it's because she's kind of standing upside down, but it works. Again, lovely composition with the circle around, creating like a yeah, just really nice focus area with the bee or the, yeah, the flying animal on it. I think it looks really really cool. Lots of lovely details there. Lots of lovely like a contrast between the colors. I think that works really nicely too. So let's have a look at it. Um, Fujifilm Fine Pics. Now, is this a mobile phone? I would say it's a mobile phone. Looking at the camera settings, ISO 64, 5 millimeters, f3.1, and 1/170th of a second. So if we say that it's a mobile phone or some kind of mobile device, I'm super impressed by the result. I mean, that's very, very cool to end up with something like this. The texture on the hoverfly, as Tony says, is really, really, really nice. I mean, the details on the wings, that's beautiful. And the details on the head, again, really, really lovely. The details on the flower, lovely. And I think this shows great example on how you have a really good eye for composition, because this is like taking the learnings from the last 3 episodes when you were showing the flowers um, with a great composition, lovely color contrast, and everything. And now you add to it another step, and that's the animal with all these details. And together, I think it just works very well. The crop and framing on a square is great as well. So this is great. This is great. Now, if it was captured with like a mobile device, I'm impressed even more. In general, I would like it to have even a little bit more sharpness, but I think it just looks great anyway. It's great. Personally, I still keep tilting my head because it's just how she sit on it is quite unnatural, but I think it's great. I really, really like that. Now, this one isn't as sharp as the first one. If I have to, like, this one is wow, you look at it and you think, yeah, definitely print it and frame it. This one is not great. I think it's a little bit blurry. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but when I zoom, it's to do, it's to do with the resolution of the image. This is why maybe the quality isn't great, because when I zoom out, it's not as visible. But because it's 1000 on 1000 pixels and 808 kilobytes, the moment I zoom in, it just start to be very pixelated. So I prefer the first one. The mushroom is nice, but I think we keep the mushroom for a few more weeks until September. But it's nicely done. Again, lovely contrast with the beautiful, colorful background, nice drops, lovely details. Yeah, just nicely done. Then we have another fly. Let me see if I zoom out. So this would be the right size. 2000 on 1730 pixel, and that works nicely. You have the animal in the middle, it's all about it. Then you have the white flower or plant here, which I think create like a really nice base. The contrast is really nice here. It works really nicely together. So let's just look at the camera details on this one. This was Canon 50D with the ISO 100, f8, and 1/250th of a second. So when it comes to camera details with the 135 millimeters, I think everything is set right. The background is soft, but you can still recognize it. So I think that's really nice too. The details are very decent. The light is decent as well. Maybe you see some highlights, but nothing too crazy. So all in all, I think it's very, very lovely. Now, similarly, if you started with the square crop, I think this one could equally have a square crop. We just go for one-on-one And maybe just do something like this. Then we get, I think, a little bit more impact. And then I would maybe apply a little bit more vignette, again, focusing on the animal. I would personally add a little bit of warmth, I think. I think there is lots of green in it. So a little bit of warmth and maybe a little bit of magenta, not because I want the image to be purple, but because I want to counterpart, oh, sorry, I want to counterpart the tint. So somewhere around here, let me have a look before and after. And I think it already looks a little bit nicer. Maybe a little bit of glow as well goes a long way, something like this. And a little bit of extra details on the animal. So this time with just brush. So let's say I just brush the details very roughly, very quickly on the actual animal. Let me see, and even more. So somewhere around here. And then you end up with something like this. So before and after, and I think it's quite cool. Really, really nice. Tony, thank you very much. So this one, and then we have the tomato, which again is very lovely. So there's some nice drops on it. It's a lovely contrast, again, confirming me that the composition is really like your strength when it comes to photography. I think the combination of the red with the green is really lovely. But if I have to choose, I really like this one today. I think that's a great picture. And this one also is really, really cool. So well done. Well done on all the pictures. Thank you for sharing them with us. And let's continue further. Now, before we do that, just looking at Tony comment, camera with super macro setting. Okay. Where were we? On the first one, Fujifilm Fine Pigs. I will look at it later. I will definitely check it out. Thank you for that. So that brings us to Zdeněk. Zdeněk, who's been patiently waiting since the beginning of the show. Finally, it's your turn. So let's have a look at the images. I know that Zdeněk is still in the middle of the winter because he's based in South Africa. So he's trying something different. He's working with light or soft box or light box and trying to capture different things. This one I think is great. And this one is very lovely too. So let's have a look at both of them. Now, what are we looking at? African tools. So starting with this one, we are on ISO 100, 17 millimeters, f11, 1/25th of the second. So we have much better light, I think, compared from last week. I really like the diffusion. I really like the even light. Maybe a little bit of a shame that we get some highlights here on the upper part, but the rest I think is great. I think it's much better. It's very clean sharpness wise. Let's zoom in to 100. Yeah, sharpness is good too. No noise. So all these parts I think work really, really well. I like the fact that you get sharpness all the way from the front all the way to the end, which is really, really nice too. So I think from technical part, everything works here. The light is good. The details and texture is good. No noise. All good here. Now, when it comes to composition, I think just to push it even further, I would probably try to bring this up a little bit to avoid this fold here. I think that's maybe just one part which is distracting. And again, following the idea of human eyes being attracted by contrast, which often is brighter or lighter parts of the image, my eyes immediately go up here, which is a little bit of a shame. So it's just one more thing to work on, and that's really to make sure that the bright area or the contrasty area is on the main subject, which is the pot with the tools. So that's just one bit. The fold here, and try to control the light even further, pointing it towards the center of the image. Equally, I think I find these stripes on the side a little bit distracting. Again, I think because they're not really balanced, they come from each side. So I would either crop them out or maybe next time zoom in even further and try to avoid them. So that would be all of that for composition. Now, the framing is quite nice. I like the depth with the tools going and pointing towards the camera. Again, as I say, obviously with this picture, you can't 100% crop these away, but you could to some degree do something like this. Maybe that's a little bit too tight. And that way you avoid that part. And then obviously with cloning or something, you could try to replace this part, but I will not attend that because then we would never move anywhere. Obviously, a little bit of vignette pointing here, maybe with extra inner light, just kind of pointing towards here, something like this. Little bit of extra details and maybe a little bit of contrast. Yeah, something like this. And I think that looks quite nicely too. So just a few tips on this one and we can leave it there. Moving on the second image. So we have a man and rose. So that's like a statue with a rose in it. Now, this is very clean. Looking at the camera settings, this is again Canon M6, 15 to 45 millimeters on the lens. This is ISO 100, 19 millimeters, f11, and 1/25th of a second. So this is, as a product picture, I think it's spot on. The light is nice. It creates nice shadow in these areas and inside. It's very clean. There is no distraction. The sharpness is good. The texture is good. There's a little bit of color there. There's a good amount of space around the statue, and I think it works. You can leave the space around here or no. I think in this case, this specific subject could be in the center of the image. It doesn't have to be like a centered out, but still, because he looking at that direction, I think it works nicely too. So whatever you prefer on this one, still, I think it's great image, and there is not much I can actually add on it. It's just nicely done. Let's have a look. Yeah, everything looks good. Now, this is one of the very few cases where I wouldn't even apply vignette because it doesn't need it. It's just really nice, pure product or item picture or object photo, which it just everything is clean on it and nicely done. So well done, Zdeněk. Well done on this one. Great job. So where on first one, I had lots to say on this one. I don't. I think it works well. Great. Did you capture both of these in the same light box? That would be interesting to know. Because I really like also the bright background. I think that just worked very well. Moving on, guys, we have still 3 more photographers to look at. And the first one from the wildlife section of photography is from Donna. Donna, thank you very much for sending your pictures over. It's always a real pleasure to see them. So I'm really glad that we can get to see your pictures again. And we have this owl here and also this beautiful bird here flying towards the flower. So starting with this one, we are working with Nikon D850. The lens was 70 to 200 millimeters, f2.8. I mean, that's a great lens for this type of pictures. ISO 800 still, because you will be going for 1/4000th of a second on a shutter speed to capture it like this. f2.8 and 200 millimeters, so all the way through. One thing I like, first, obviously the sharpness is great on the animal and on the flower, but I really like the background. I think that looks super cool. In overall, it creates a really nice color, not composition, but the mix of colors is great. I love pastel colors, and I think this just works really well. You have the flowers, you have the bird, and then you have this kind of almost like bokeh-like background. That's just really nicely done. I really like that. I like the framing. I think everything works nicely here. The separation between the main subject and background is just a great picture. Very nicely done. Now, maybe on a main subject, there is a lot of light on it, so that would be just one thing I wish maybe it was a little bit more diffused, but in overall, it's just super well done, technically very well captured, and with lovely results. So very well done on that. Now, when it comes to the artistic part, obviously it's really clear what the main subject is. The background is great and everything. Technically, you could play around with the crop a lot. You could, for example, really bring it just to the bird itself. So let's say that we would go for like a square crop and actually almost avoid so much of the flower and distraction, and maybe just go for something like this. So you would end up you would add a little bit more intensity on the main subject and remove the distraction of the flower by doing, I think, something like this. I just really like a little bit of the flower and then all about the bird and the background. That's what I would do maybe as well. Just try different things. Obviously, you could also try just like 16 on 9, but the other way around, and maybe end up, this is a little bit too tight, so let's just make it a little bit bigger and maybe end up also with something like this, which would be really interesting as well. Just the different things. It's nothing wrong with the image itself, just different crops, different visions, and different things. Because I think maybe this part of the plan here is just a little bit extra compared to everything else on it, but still great image. Which brings us to the second image, Donna. This one is a beautiful bird. Looking at it, the way he looks, it's look like he's a little bit scared or shocked that he was found. But it's a beautiful, beautiful all. This is all watch. I'm not sure. No, looking at the camera settings, this is Nikon Z6 with the 100 to 400 millimeters lens. The camera settings was ISO 200, 400 millimeters, f5.6, and 1/125th of a second. So everything good here. ISO 200 for this type of situation is very good. 400 millimeters, so really zoom in there. F5.6. F5.6 with 400 millimeters, I have to say, give you a really nice depth. I would assume the background would be even softer than it is on this image. So that's nicely done. 1/125th of a second. Yeah, for this image, so I'm assuming maybe the main subject wasn't moving that much. Either way, it's again great picture. Now I found this piece of tree a little bit distracting there, but obviously he's standing on it, so you kind of looking up, so that's the way it is and there's nothing you can do about it. Still, well done for finding the bird poking through here, because I think that's probably as best as you can do from this position. Now when it comes to the artistic part, I quite like the fact that the green, then the earthy brown or dark brown and black of the tree creates really nice contrast already. And in the middle of it is that bird, which really stands out because it has a colors which are not on the rest of the image. So all in all, it's lovely picture, lovely composition, and it's well done again. So similarly to the first image, again, you could play around with the crop and see if maybe any of it wouldn't be even more fun. Not that there was anything wrong with the first one, but maybe this way you lose a little bit of the distraction of the trees and canopy, and you're really focusing on the bird itself. Again, you know myself, I'm a big fan of vignette, especially when I really want to add attention towards like the main subject. So I think this is lovely too. And yeah, maybe just a little bit of pink, not pink too much, maybe just 6-7 to remove a little bit of the green haze. But everything else is beautiful. It's a lovely capture. Great, well done. Thank you, Donna, for sharing both of the images with us. It was really a pleasure to see them and review them for you. Which brings us to John. John, did we see some lizards last week? Let's have a look just to make sure. John, here. So we were looking at these two last week. So now let's have a look what we have this week. Starting with the first one right here. This was captured with Nikon Z6 70 to 300 millimeters, and from the camera settings, ISO 720, 300 millimeters, f5.6, and 1/80th of a second. So very nice picture. The camera settings, yes, the ISO is a little bit higher, but I'm assuming with maybe the light condition, with also the 300 millimeters and f5.6, you had to go a little bit higher in order to work with the shutter speed. So I understand that. Now, looking at the image itself, it has a lovely level of details. The noise, I think it's quite acceptable, so it's quite nice. The first thing that strikes me is the difference between the light on a main subject and the background. I think the balance still isn't 100% there. I think you maybe worked with trying to kind of separate them and add more attention towards the main subject, but it almost looks like the animal is glowing. So a little bit less darkness in the background, I think would really help just to create a little smoother transition through. Let me show you if I can maybe help to it here with the Relight AI. Brightness far. I think that's the tool you could use. Let's have a look. What we would do. No, let's have a look. Yeah, something like this. No, maybe just a little bit brighter in this area and brightness near. Yeah, maybe something like this. Maybe just open the background a little bit, but it didn't really work as well. What about the accent AI? Yeah, something like this. I think maybe something like this would help if the background would be open just a little bit more. I think sometimes when you do this kind of edit and you create such a contrast between the background and main subject, it's good to take a moment, go away, and then come back and look at the image again. And maybe you would see that maybe the contrast is a little bit too strong. Otherwise, I think it's great. It's a great framing. It's a great composition. And in overall, it's a lovely, lovely image. Which brings us to the image number 2. And that has a similar story, really, when you look at it. Again, you have a beautiful animal with lovely details, lovely texture, great light as well. But again, I think the animal, from my point of view anyway, I think is a little bit too bright compared to the rest of the image. Still, looking at the camera settings, this was ISO 450, f5.6, 1/80th of a second, and 220 millimeters. So again, the setting is pretty good. Sharpness all the way great. Uh, Exposure great. Noise, obviously, on the brighter parts you can't see anyway, so that's all well done. The only thing is the background, which I think is just a little bit too dark. Otherwise, as a composition, it's nice. Yeah, I would probably go a little tighter. I think there is lots of kind of empty space areas, which are a shame, but in overall, I think it works. Maybe like a square crop on this one and get something that has a little bit more impact, maybe like this, would work quite well too. So, John, thank you very much for sending both of the image overs. I really think that the main thing is just the contrast between the background and the main subject. Otherwise, they are beautiful, great, great images. And that brings us to Ken. And I think for the first time ever, we don't have a, even by default, I put Ken's pictures in a wildlife folder. And now, for the first time, I think, since I know Ken and since I've been looking at his images, his pictures are not bird pictures. Let me have a look. What did Ken say? Ken said that landscape photos from one is photo of 3 water lilies amongst a group of lily pads taken in Ithaca, New York, and the other one is a ghostly tree taken last year in Endicott in New York. Stationary landscapes are much easier to photograph, definitely, instead of constantly moving birds. Definitely, Ken, you're right. So ghostly tree, let's have a look at it. Now there is no, yeah, there are some camera details. This is ISO 100, 8.5 millimeters, f4.5, 1/2000 of a second. It's a lovely picture. The camera settings and looking at it, it all looks good. I really like the kind of dramatic feel of it with that light from behind the tree. It's quite lovely. Now looking at it from landscape photographer point of view, there is one thing maybe which is a little bit distracting on it, is this tree right here. Just kind of again talking about balance and creating balance on the image. I think if there would be a way to avoid this tree, that would make it a little bit more balanced and powerful. However, this almost like silhouette like capture, I think works really nicely. It's lovely with a little bit of warmth at the bottom, with the light behind the tree, creating this shadow. I think it works very, very well. So well done, Ken, on this capture. It's a lovely picture. Technically, I don't see anything really wrong there. Composition, as I say, just maybe this part here, and well done. And then we have the lilies. So looking at them, again, ISO 100 here, 135 millimeters, f5.6, and 1/640th of a second. So from setting wise, nothing wrong there. The lovely contrast between the white ladies and the rest image works very well, and it's very nicely done. What I would do, I would probably crop it tighter. I think there's a lot of the background which is not necessarily that important. So maybe like 16:9 again, and just go for something like this, and then you just get much more impact to the flowers and to the rest of the image. Lovely details, lovely it works well. So in overall, it's really nicely done. Maybe a little bit vignette and a little bit of extra glow. Not maybe that much, maybe somewhere around here. And that's what I would do with it. So Ken, thank you very much for sending both of the images over. This one is beautiful with the lovely contrast and lovely colors. And the first one is also very creative. Once again, the only thing I would think of is for the composition and the tree. So there you have it. These were our photographers for this week. Folks, thank you very much for joining us. 45 minutes gone. Now looking quickly at the comments, Zdenek was saying that it was the same light box as for the figurine as well as for the tools. So that's really cool. I really like the light in it. I think that worked really well. Now for rest of you, we're gonna be doing photo walk with Luminar or Luminar Neo on 19th of August here in London. We're gonna start in Novotel Tower Bridge, where we're gonna have a half an hour, 45 minutes editing session, and then we're gonna walk alongside the river from Tower Bridge all the way to Westminster, where we're gonna end up taking picture, hopefully, of a sunset in London. So definitely something to looking forward. And if you're from around here, come and join us. It would be great. There are more details about this on our Facebook page, and we will be sharing this along the road all the way until the 19th of August. Now, this was the last session for July. There is already uploading link on the Facebook page and in the membership for 7th of August. And tomorrow, when we release the new bundle for August, it will come also with the new dates and new upload links. So don't worry about that. Everything is organized. For today, folks, thank you very much for joining me. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe. Take care. And I can't wait to see you again next week, 6 p.m. UK time here on YouTube, and hopefully next week on Facebook and Facebook group.